remember the 2014 film Blended? Starred Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore. It played two single parents who went on one horrific date together, then got trapped with their respective children on a safari vacation in Africa. By the end, of course, they fall in love, and the families merge as one. It's a truly ridiculous plot, and the setup in the trailer is stuff cringe is made of.
My boy would give anything to go on a vacation like this.
Mr. Theodopoulos, hi, it's Jim.
I wonder
If you'd be willing to sell me the vacation.
Wait until I tell the boys.
Wait till I tell the girls. We're going to Africa! Yeah!
It didn't do well. It got a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 31 on Metacritic. While there are plenty of reasons critics and audiences might have had negative feelings about such a lazy effort at filmmaking, one of the big ones is that the concept of a blended family was not noteworthy by 2014. That wasn't the case back in 1966, when Sherwood Schwartz first pitched the idea for the Brady Bunch. Schwartz already knew a little bit about success in the TV industry. He'd already created Gilligan's Island by this point, and he felt that families portrayed on screen were not particularly realistic. Schwartz was quoted as saying that television was loaded with happily married couples and single widows and widowers, but there wasn't any show that revolved around the marital amalgamation of two families. This didn't jive with an article Schwartz had recently read in the Los Angeles Times, claiming that 30% of marriages involved children from a previous relationship. With this and the rising divorce rate at the time period, Schwartz felt it was time to tell a different kind of family story. The Brady Bunch would feature a widower with 3 sons marrying a divorcee with 3 daughters, creating a blended family of 8. TV executives weren't quite ready for this concept, however. He shelved the idea for a few years. And then came the 1968 film Yours, Mine, and Ours. It starred Titans Lucille Ball and Henry North and was based on a true story. Despite the strength of the casting and source material, critics weren't especially fond of this film. But that didn't matter, because general audiences absolutely loved it. That meant that the premise for the Brady Bunch was suddenly not such a dangerous idea anymore. So Schwartz was able to come to an agreement with ABC, and the rest is history. While the show did run for 5 seasons from 1969 to 1974, 117 episodes in total, and is today considered a perfectly viable source of family-friendly entertainment, it was not considered a success at the time. It won no awards, at least not while it was still airing new episodes, and it was canceled pretty unceremoniously after that 5th season. The Brady dynasty continues to live on, through countless sequels, spin-offs, reunions, including the Brady Bunch Hour, the Brady Girls Get Married, the Brady Brides, A Very Brady Christmas, and the Bradys. There was also a 1995 film, The Brady Bunch Movie, and a sequel, A Very Brady Sequel. This kept the cast busy portraying their Brady selves long after the show ended, which is fortunate. Most of them never took on larger roles than the characters they played in the Brady Bunch. Speaking of the cast, let's meet them. We have to start with Mike, the family patriarch. He was calm, even-keeled, so morally upright that he once lost a contract in his architect work despite being good at his job, because he refused to comply with an order to cut safety measures. Character.com says it best. If he entered a Father of the Year contest, all the other dads are playing for second.
Even though he's only been my dad for a short time, no father could be a realer father than Michael Brady.
Mike was played by Robert Reed. He first appeared as a guest star in Father Knows Best, which led to some bit parts and a big role in a show called The Defenders, which featured a father-son team of defense attorneys. He also appeared in several Broadway productions and took his stage training very seriously. He thought the role of a sitcom dad was beneath him. Although married to Marilyn Rosenberger from 1954 to 59, it was well known among the Brady Bunch cast that Reed was gay, and determined to keep his personal life a secret for fear it would destroy his career. He died in 1992 at the age of 59. His oldest child was Greg. Greg was the oldest on either side, actually, and an all-around ladies' man. He was known as the Casanova of Clinton Avenue, or as the Brady Bunch wiki page aptly calls him, the grooviest guy to attend Westdale High. He doesn't think much of women drivers.
No,
No offense, Mom, but it's an established fact that men are better drivers. They're always in control. Women are too emotional, right, Dad?
But he also inherited Mike's sense of doing the right thing and serves as a protector for the younger siblings, especially the girls. He went on to become an obstetrician, marry a woman named Nora, and have a son named Kevin. Greg was played by Barry Williams, who knew as a child he wanted to be an actor. His first role was in a Christmas episode of Dragnet in 1967. He got bit parts after that, before landing the role of Greg Brady. He's continued to work as an actor following the show's cancellation in 1974, and he also stays busy performing music. He made his home in Branson, Missouri, as of 2019. Next we have Peter, the middle child on Mike's side. He's described as overly sensitive with a fragile ego, emotional, and the clumsiest of all the Brady children. He's also the only child with brown eyes. He later joins the military for career guidance, has a brief stint as an administrative assistant, and then ultimately goes into business with Bobby. He's the only Brady child who does not marry. And he doesn't want you to look at his naked knee.
Oh!
What's the matter?
My knee, an old football injury. I better go take a look at it.
Well, let me help you.
No! I mean, I just met you. I couldn't let you look at my naked knee.
Peter was played by Christopher Knight, who appeared in several small roles in film and TV following the end of the show, like the rest of the cast, but actually left acting entirely in 1988 to join the computer industry. He eventually founded Visual Software, as well as other successful companies, although he did return to acting, of course, and continues to make appearances today. That brings us to Bobby, the youngest of Mike's children and the second youngest overall. Bobby actually forms a really close bond with Carol's youngest daughter, Cindy, over the course of the show. He's the typical youngest child in a lot of ways. He's full of cheer, little mischief. He's often worried about being left out of his older siblings' activities. Once he saves a bird and gets to his head a little bit, thinks of himself as a hero.
Hear that, bird? I'm a hero.
As an adult, he actually becomes a race car driver after dropping out of college. He loses the use of his legs in a horrific accident, however, and then settles down, marrying his college girlfriend and going into business with Peter. Bobby was portrayed by Mike Lookinland. He was raised as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints growing up, and still to this day calls Salt Lake City his home, or at least that's where his decorative concrete business is based out of. He was a child actor in commercials even before the Brady Bunch, and he actually had a couple offers on the table before his parents ultimately decided playing Bobby Brady would give him a chance to be around other children and would probably be better for him. Like the rest of the cast, he's reprised his role as Bobby often in the sequels and spin-offs over the years, but he seems more focused on his business these days. Then there's the other side of the family. We got Carol Martin, well, formerly Carol Martin, Carol Brady in the course of this show. She actually has a more ambiguous story about the loss of her first spouse than Mike does. All we know is he disappeared and left her to raise the children on her own. She is a stay-at-home mom, but it's of her own choosing. She's got lots of hobbies and talents like freelance writing, sculpting, and she's actually a political activist. According to her wiki character page, her favorite things in the show are large terracotta vases, dangly earrings, and singing in church. She also loves corny jokes. Alice's dry humor, usually a little bit much for her. While the show may have gone to some lengths to make her somewhat modern and empowered, there is certainly an element of traditionalism in her role as well.
I don't have to be logical. I'm a mother.
Carol was played by Florence Henderson, who actually began her career in musicals, where she starred in several Broadway productions. She was also the first female guest host of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson in 1962, and appeared on The Today Girl, an NBC morning show of the time. Her defining role, of course, was that of Carol Brady. She died in 2016 at the age of 82. Carol's oldest daughter is Marcia, eldest of the Brady girls, second eldest overall, and sets an impossible standard for her sisters, or really any other female in history, to live up to. She is smart, pretty, endlessly fascinating, and good at whatever she tries. She does well in school, she's a cheerleader, she pretty much embodies perfection.
Resolved. Now you can sit there full of self-pity, or you can be mature and do something about it. Pick a side.
Eventually, she goes on to become a fashion designer and marry Wally Logan. and at that point she actually leaves her career to be a stay-at-home mom for children Jessica and Michael. She later gets back into the workforce, a catering business with her 2 sisters-in-law. Marcia was played by Maureen McCormick. Like most of the cast, a lot of her post-Brady work was appearing in Brady-related content and a few bit roles. She did release 4 studio albums with the other cast members, as well as a solo album in the country music genre. It was called When You Get a Little Lonely, back in 1995. She at times has struggled with drug usage, depression, and bulimia, all of which she explored at length in her 2008 autobiography. You can't talk about Marcia without talking about Jan, Carol's middle daughter. Jan's most notable character trait is perhaps that she's insanely jealous of Marcia.
Marcia, Marcia, Marcia!
Marcia's confidence is directly contrasted by Jan's insecurity about her appearance. She even goes so far as to make up a fictional boyfriend to remedy the torment of being single. Eventually, she comes to terms with the fact that she is not Marcia, and she finds her own path, where she discovers a love for painting and art and design as a whole. That leads her to take after Mike and become an architect. She later marries her college professor, Philip, which is kind of scandalous when you think about it. Jan was played by Eve Plum, who, like Mike Lookinland, already had acted in some commercials before the Brady Bunch. She also had some bit parts, too, before becoming Jan, and she continued to act after the show's end, as well as reappearing as Jan whenever needed. She had a supporting role in the 2013 film Blue Ruin. Like her character in The Brady Bunch, Plum's an accomplished painter, and her work appears in galleries across the United States. She even has a New York City-based alt-rock band named after her, Eve's Plum. That brings us to Cindy, youngest of Carol's bunch, youngest of all of the bunch. Cindy was famous for her curls, which is even referenced in the show's theme song. She did switch to pigtails in season 4, and then let her hair down completely in season 5. Like Jan, she struggled with the standards Marcia set, and with her lisp. She was also a bit of a snoop, and a tattletale.
Don't worry, Mommy. I'll never tell on anyone again.
She later got work at a radio station as a DJ, and became romantically entangled with her much older boss. The show was canceled before that storyline could be concluded. Cindy was played by Susan Olsen, who, like the rest of them, also stayed active acting in smaller roles, and much like Plum, had actual talent and the interest her character pursued in the show. In this case, Olsen actually worked as a radio talk show host and appeared in 26 episodes of Cartoon Network's talk show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast. The lisp her character had was real, and Olsen had to put in a lot of work to overcome it for her career. She has also served as an activist for migraine sufferers, having struggled with them extensively in her personal life. On a bad note, Olsen was embroiled in some controversy in 2016. She was fired from her LA-based radio show Two Chicks Talkin' Politics after feuding with a gay actor who then accused her of homophobia. Olsen appeared on Fox News in 2019 to defend herself, calling the whole thing fake news and claiming she was never fired. Sound familiar? Last but not least, we have Alice Nelson, the Brady's live-in housekeeper and friend. Alice originally worked for Mike and his previous wife, but stayed on when he married Carol. She was known for her self-deprecating humor and was equally fair to all 6 Brady children. And her flapjacks were to die for. But don't take my word for it.
Anybody for more flapjacks? Hot off the griddle and still flapping?
Alice was a legit member of the Brady household, too. Her character actually appeared in all 117 episodes of the show, something that only she, Florence Henderson, and Barry Williams could claim. The children included her in all their games, the family took her with them on their vacations. She was irreplaceable, except for that one episode where they tried to fire her, but that didn't take. Alice was romantically linked to Sam the Butcher throughout the show's run, and eventually she marries him. Alice was played by Ann B. Davis, who of course was already a veteran actress by the time the Brady Bunch came along. Davis had significant success playing Charmaine Schultz in The Bob Cummings Show, where she won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series, twice. She even received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960. She did some Broadway work, appeared in commercials for the Ford Motor Company, and performed stand-up comedy. She died in 2014, at the age of 88. Now, individually, these characters may not mean a whole lot, but put them together and they tell a story. That's the story we're going to talk about today. I'm Spencer Hendricks with Brian Vaughn and Van Lee, and this is Boob Tube Boys, a Bootu Inc. production.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up 3 very lovely girls. All of them had hair of gold.
And that's pretty much how we became the Boob Tube Boys, right, guys?
Yep.
By marriage.
Mm-hmm.
We just covered a lot of the show, but of course I can't mention everything in my little pre-recorded intro. And I also didn't talk about the theme song at all. So we've got some topics we can still discuss. Were you educated by the intro? Did you learn anything?
Learned a lot out of this, a lot of questions I had.
Oh, good.
That, you know what, I'm just going to leave my notes as is. Particularly when we get to the next episode involving Alice, you cleared something up that I wasn't clear on. But we'll get on that then. But
sure.
Yeah, no, a lot of this stuff, didn't know any of it.
Yeah, especially the character futures. Like, I've watched a lot of this show, unfortunately, on Nick at Night as a child and in other forms of syndication. So I knew quite a bit about it, but there was some new stuff here. I'm really interested in the fact that all of these characters have fully plotted out futures, some of which sound quite ordinary, which I like. Like, I don't know, I run a catering business with my sister-in-law.
The saddest thing of all the actual actors was by far Robert Reed being, having to live in the closet because of fear of being revealed at that time period, and basically being a really unhappy person because of it. It's his story was actually really sad, and it's so strange compared to the role he plays in the show being so cheerful and dumb.
Did you guys know this about Robert Reed?
I remembered hearing it as a kid. I think it was my mom was telling me a little bit about him for some reason. I don't know why.
So I knew too, and I felt like it was a almost like a playground assertion of knowledge when I was a kid. Of like, did you know that the dad from the Brady Bunch is actually gay?
That's true. That is a kind of thing that, like, especially kids would be interested in.
And that was true. There were other ones like, did you know Marilyn Manson had a rib removed to suck his own penis? That was one. Do you guys remember some other ones of these?
There were a lot of them.
They went around when people were playing tetherball.
A big one for me was, of course, video game related, where it would be like, did you know in Mario 64, if you go here, you can become Fire Mario?
Yeah, and they'd make stuff up like that, that like I wanted to be able to do, but...
It's so easy now, you can just get your phone out and Google it and be like, that's not true. You made that up. Back then,
different time.
There's no way to know. Someone could say anything and you'd be like, well, that sounds unlikely, but...
I would have loved to shove my phone in Travis Kaiser's face and be like, look, this is what's true. Here's what you're saying.
What did he say?
I don't know.
See,
all
the problem,
sorts of stupid
there's
stuff
people,
that wasn't true.
People like Travis Kaiser would probably still say now. You could show them why they're wrong. They'd be like, I don't care.
You won't believe how fast my dad was. That's
can't
the sort of
find
stuff
that
he
in
would
Google.
say. In sixth grade, he'd be like, my dad was one of the fastest dads.
To be fair, what I would do at this time is I would make obscure, wild shit up just to sow chaos. It was never to the level of like so-and-so's gay.
What about your dad's speed?
My dad wasn't around, so I
you
didn't
didn't
know
think
his
about
speed.
that. Did you say anything about your mom being fast?
I didn't. To my knowledge.
She
It's been a
probably
long time.
was, though.
I mean,
I was fast
I
as
was going to
shit.
say you
You
had to
were.
have inherited your speed from someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More I think about it, it probably was not my father, considering he's just a pear. But, yeah, I don't know. One thing I did want to mention after listening to the little informative bit we had here is that Barry Williams, who played the oldest son, Greg, I don't know any of their names.
That's
outside of
okay.
that, too.
Yeah, that's right.
He had a show in Branson. You said he performed in Branson. It was a reality TV show where I guess they followed him around. And it was called A Very Barry Williams Branson Story, something like that. You can't find it anywhere. Listeners, Johnny Radical, and if any of you out there can find this, get it to me because Haiti, my girlfriend, wants to watch it.
I also would like to contribute something about Barry Williams that was not in the intro, which is he has won the saddest award I can think of that a person could win.
And there are a lot of sad awards, so I'm curious to hear this.
Was it Bozo of the Week?
He got, no, that's very honorable. He got something called Former Child Star Lifetime Achievement Award at the Youth and Film Awards. It just sounds so sad.
Yeah, if you're having to give someone a former child's a star for being a child, it's obvious they didn't do anything.
And Lifetime Achievement proves it. It's like, for your life, you are most known for once having been a child star.
Like Danny Bonaducci?
Yeah,
was
and
that his
it didn't go
competition?
well for that guy.
Is he dead?
Probably.
He's tried to be.
Yeah, he's had a life. We'll say that.
So musically, Barry Williams, of course, notwithstanding, they had several people in the show that consider themselves musical artists, I guess.
Neil Young.
And the theme song we actually listened to at the top of this is the one where the Brady kids actually sang it. I was looking it up. They took over the duties starting in season 2, apparently. So we're doing season 3 and 4, and so that we got that version of it to where the kids are singing it. But apparently, this is a little nugget that Brian dropped on us. There was the original singers of the song, and the ones who wrote it were what?
Oh, the Peppermint Trolley Company, which was show creator Sherwood Schwartz and some other producers.
Which Van cannot believe.
I believe it. It sounds like one of those 1970s bands. Like, for example, there's that
The
great
Jefferson
show,
Airplane.
Yeah, there's a great show documentary now where they have a fake band with Bill Hader and what's his
Brett
name?
Armisen.
Brett Armisen, where it's called the Blue Jean Committee.
Yes,
and
exactly
it's stuff
like
that is so fitting for that era.
And then the pilot has a completely different setting, one that was, wait, was this the Peppermint people?
Maybe it was.
Let's have a listen.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up 3 very lovely girls.
That is better.
You like that more than the Brady
Yeah, it
kids
has a
singing
certain.
Bad.
I'm looking for something to hang my hat on, but yeah, it's not good. I like the approach of a story song for this show, even if I don't really love the song. I guess
That version sounds like a couple of bulb-headed boys sitting around playing a guitar.
When you say bulb-headed, you mean they have bowl haircuts from the 70s,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it does sound like that.
How tight are their pants?
As tight as pants can
Just
be.
like balls bursting out of the front.
You see every bit in front and you see every bit in back.
Before we start on the episode, did anything else that you felt up top worth mentioning about the show or the actors that we didn't talk about in the intro or already?
What is the Defenders?
Yes.
That it's like a couple of brother
Apparently,
public defenders.
I thought Robert Reed would have been all Brady Bunch and only Brady Bunch, but yeah, I guess that show was really popular.
Huh.
And he was well regarded for it.
We'll do it on the Boob Tube Boys someday.
Maybe we should. I mean, it would have gone really well with the Matlock situation. You know, we could go into a whole legal theme.
So something I didn't know at all that you brought up in the intro, and I did pick up on just kind of doing cursory research a little bit, that the Brady Bunch was not popular in its initial run.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In any way was something that before we decided to cover this, I did not know.
I think a lot of people don't know that because it's so well remembered.
It's everywhere now.
But yeah, I think at the time it was just another show and nobody cared. You can sense when you watch these episodes that it's all just like cut out 70s stuff. Like your cookie cutter 70s is everything about this show.
And that's kind of one thing I wanted to mention is I wonder if this is an early instance of culture kind of gravitating toward, nostalgia and kitsch over creativity. And that's why this sort of gained traction over time.
Yeah, that very well could be. It spoke to people on some level, obviously.
No one in the 70s wanted to watch this, but perhaps people that were the age of the Brady kids did want to watch it 20 years later in syndication.
And I remember when you announced this as a show we were doing and you were like, it ran 5 seasons. All of us were like, what?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be like 12.
I would have assumed double it. Yeah, I would have assumed a real Dallas situation.
A real Waltons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it apparently just wasn't really that big of a deal when they stopped running it. Like I mentioned up top, it's just kind of stopped. ABC just had enough, and I think the world was okay with it. They were like, whatever. There's some things in the Brady Bunch that have become pretty famous and iconic since then. Like the episode we're going to cover today, everyone knows the Marcia, Marcia, Marcia line, which is the only time that Jan said that in the show. In the 95 movie, she says it. It comes back there, and of course, that's a different version of Jan. But the character in the show only says that line that everyone knows in this episode. It never comes up again in the show.
And I mean, when I was a kid and they would have commercials for this, like check out Nick at Night, see the Bradys. It was every single time.
Yeah.
Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. I've heard it a billion
It's
times.
the show's defining moment, and as we'll see, it's not much. It's very slight.
Oh, weird. Not much. Did you just describe the Brady Bunch?
I think I did.
Yeah.
We don't get to see the pets in these episodes.
There are pets? I didn't even know that.
They have a cat and a dog, and I looked this up because I remembered them. So the girls come into this with a cat. Of course, the girls have a cat. The boys have a dog. The girls have a cat named Fluffy. Curiously, the boys have a dog named Tiger, which is famously a cat.
Interesting.
Did they mention Tiger, or maybe I just saw
You know,
it.
they might have offhand said something about Tiger.
When I was looking up clips, I think it might have been during that, but I definitely heard one of them mention Tiger, and I didn't know what that was. But I didn't know they had facts.
I see how you could have confused it for Tony the Tiger or Tiger from Dungeon Explorer. The Tiger.
Yeah, it was great till he moved in. There's a preconceived notion, particularly in my brain, of kids teasing boys or males with cats because they're effeminate.
Yeah.
That is a thing that you think of.
I think
It
that's
has
I
dying.
don't agree with it, but you think
It has
right?
historically been a thing.
I think it's dying now.
I think it is dying.
Well,
out,
that's just
yeah.
it. I've mentioned this on like Reddit or something or other, and people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
It's like I've always had cats, and people would tease me, and it's
Absolutely.
like, you're so gay.
Absolutely.
And that made me so mad.
I worked a very manual labor job for the same company I work for now, but totally different job. That was an attitude some of the people down there had. Before I got the cat I got now, Koopa, who I did get toward the tail end of me working there. I thought I was talking about getting this cat that was walking around down in the cave. We were just joking about it.
Down there?
Yeah.
Huh.
And someone did. One of the women that worked with me did adopt this cat, which was really cool. But a lot of the warehouse guys
How'd
were
the
kind
cat
of teasing.
get in the cave?
I mean, there's a big old entrance. If it's a stray cat, it can just walk on down there. It didn't need to have security credentials.
Yeah, it didn't.
Were there lots of cats that wandered in there? I know
No,
there was
that's
a
the
bat
only one
that one time.
Several bats, but that's the only cat I'd ever seen.
Lots of
down there.
cheese, from what I've heard.
Lots of cheese by Kraft. No Bat Cats by the band Mogwai. But anyway, the attitude by some of the warehouse people was like, what do you do with the cat? You know, it can't even get the birds you shoot out of the air when you hunt.
So this first episode of the two we're covering is Her Sister's Shadow, season 3, episode 7. You know, the show started in the 60s. I was hoping to get a little 60s flair, but we really we got right into 70s.
Balls deep in the 70s here.
And this actually aired early 70s, but I feel like the Brady Bunch cast just knew what was coming and they were already 70s. Because this actually came out November 19th, 1971. I could have sworn this is like vintage 1976, I don't know. It was deep into the 70s.
There are a lot of bright clashing colors and just sort of shapes that don't go together. And also, throughout this series, we really get a sense of how pervasive wood paneling was in homes.
Yeah, the house is hideous.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's enormous.
Well, Mike is really good at his architect job. He makes a lot of money. I felt like...
His real name is Frank Lloyd Mike.
I felt like even though we only watched it a season apart, like everyone looked a lot different in season 4's episode that we do next week.
Hardened.
It seemed like it was years apart, and it was just the one, or maybe a couple.
Well, we'll talk about it next week, but there is a crucial event that happens that perhaps could have changed the way they were.
Is it Mike's perm?
It's a trip to Hawaii that they take.
That's what does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, is that a movie?
It becomes one later. It's like a plot point in one of the newer ones, but it was originally in the show.
All the shows like to do kind of weird spinoffs where they go to Hawaii, apparently. That's a whole other... We can put them in Hawaii and reboot the whole show.
That really is a sitcom trope, though, or it was.
It is. Like Saved by the Bell did it, too.
Even recently, I know Modern Family did one of those.
Ooh, yeah,
don't get me started on
5 or 8. One day, we will cover that, and we will... you and I have, I think, the exact same opinion of it, and we will get to discuss that.
It's funny occasionally, but it's also obnoxious.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you watch 10 of them, you've seen them.
That's exactly what I did. I watched like the first season and a half, and I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't ever need to see this again.
And at the beginning, you're like, I might like this.
Yeah, this has promise.
Then after a while, you're like, I'd like to throw this in the garbage and then set the garbage on fire.
And then after a while, you're like, oh, this is called Modern Family, but it should be called Modern Very Affluent Family.
Yeah, and after a while, you're like, holy shit, the exterior of these houses. Am I looking at like one of the buildings at Harvard? There's ivy growing on the front of this thing?
The Brady Bunch.
We don't need to cover Modern Family now. I think we summed it up.
Yeah, we're done.
So the synopsis of this episode is when teachers compare her to Marcia, Jan is determined to establish her own identity, and boy is she ever, by trying to make the pom-pom team.
I hope we get 7 uninterrupted minutes of pom-pom routines.
Oh, you're in marching band music too, might I add. I want to say before we get into it, and I don't know how you guys are going to feel on this, but
About Sousa marches? Is that what you're going to ask?
Oh, I don't really have an opinion on that.
Okay.
I do have an opinion on, as we learn about Jan in this episode, her pettiness and her kind of, she's just real spiteful, and that gives her a lot more spice and personality than Marcia. So even though Jan's an asshole, she's a lot more likable in this episode than Marcia to me.
I 100% agree.
I think her character is just better.
I think Marcia is because she's so pristine and shiny. And
She's so
good at
boring.
everything.
She's so boring.
She's boring as shit. And if I see people like that in life, I'm like, I hate you. You've never had to suffer through anything. Everything is handed to you. I'm Jan.
Can we get you saying the line?
Marcia, Marcia, Marcia.
So it actually opens with Jan right away being just a total asshole about Marcia, because we're at Jan's school, Jan and Marcia's school, I guess. They're a couple years apart, but they go to the same school. I don't know. I didn't actually look up the ages of the Bradys, but they're all over the map. So we're at Jan's school where she just turned in her essay, What America Means to Me. Her teacher tells her she's pleased with how much her work has been improving. Then again, she always has high expectations for the Brady family. Marcia, for instance, was one of the best students she's ever fucking had.
She also compliments the title, and I'm like, that's the fucking laziest phoned in title.
What America Means to me.
That's nothing. That's like somebody's stupid like slogan, like campaign slogan.
It would work in politics today.
The only thing they could have done to save that is how, like in Parks and Recreation, when the kid turned in the what is democracy, like what's the purpose of democracy or something, or
oh yeah,
it's something. A little girl tries to write an essay about the function of government, and Ron pulls her aside and talks to her about his libertarian views, and
gives her a landmine.
She's so jaded that when she turns it in, it just says it doesn't, and that's the end of that plot line here. Unless Jan's essay was something like that and What America Means to Me, this is a bullshit essay, I can tell you right now.
What do you think America does mean to Jan?
Being better than Marcia?
I think she would be in favor of a lot of new anti-Marcia legislation. And what's funny about this is this is a pretty famous fact about the Brady Bunch, never mentions Vietnam once, despite existing entirely toward in Vietnam in that era. But like, I love the idea of these kids writing these totally whitewashed essays that somehow dodge that like the biggest issue in the country entirely.
I can see why the Brady Bunch would not deem themselves good enough to tackle that in the course of their stupid plot lines.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to make that work.
They could have done one of those things like, our neighbor's brother went off to war and didn't come back, and then the family has to kind of think about what they feel about that, and then eventually one of them needs therapy.
So Jan is already pissed at this point at hearing Marcia's name that the teacher mentions just less than a minute into this episode. And then Marcia, when she comes in the room, she gives her the cold shoulder. Marcia says, hey, let's walk home together. Jan says, no, I can do that all by myself.
I thought this was funny right away because you guys touched on this, but Marcia is such a caricature, and so is Jan, in like these opposite directions. And seeing them play off one another, it's like, wow, how many people did it take to figure out one of the sisters is perfect and the other one's mean?
So now we get a little bit of another intro. It's more credits are rolling, and we've got our swinging 70s music playing.
I like this.
As those credits roll, and Jan's returning home from school, walking up the really 70s staircase to a really 70s room that she shares, by the way, with Marcia and Cindy. I hadn't known that until a couple scenes into this when they were like all in there, but I just assumed she was walking up to her room when in fact they all share that room together. And the boys too have their own room. So it's
they all just one big room,
like
everyone in the family.
Dorms all over the house. So they didn't, I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's an enormous house, so they could have fit several bedrooms in there, but I guess they just have the two for the kids, and then Mike and Carol's, and Alice probably sleeps outside or something.
Yeah, when they let her. Sometimes they actually dig a hole in the backyard and make her go down in it.
You're a part of this family. Now make every meal and clean everything.
Alice, you burnt the chicken into the pit.
Van had a great point too that I didn't even consider, honestly, is like Carol being at the house. Why do they need Alice?
It's nuts.
Why? Yeah, why is that a thing? Why would you? Why?
I didn't even think about it, but yeah, it's a good point.
Alice is not I come by for a couple hours and tidy up in the middle of the day.
She does everything. Time.
She, I think, lives there.
She does, yeah. So guess what greets Jan the second she walks in the room?
What's that?
Something that I saw on the internet, which I thought was pretty clever, called the Wall of Marcia, which is all of Marcia's achievements, her awards, her trophies, just plaques piled in a big corner of the wall, taking up most of the room.
There's also a ukulele.
Is that one of the things Jan sweeps up and throws in the closet?
No, it stays there the whole
plays
time.
that?
I think Marcia must have been awarded it for something.
For excellence in the field, here's your ukulele.
You've shown great skill in Hawaiian music, Marcia.
I don't know if Marcia's supposed to have been, if she plays ukulele, because I know she's musical. Who knows? So Jan makes a face at all this Marcia paraphernalia, immediately picks it up and throws it in the closet.
You know what? She shows restraint, though, because if I was as pissed off
She
as she
didn't
was,
break anything.
I would have burned all these worthless-ass middle school trophies. What good? Like, everyone's like, oh, Marcia's so good. She wins all the... Who gives a shit about middle school awards?
I will say this one thing. If you were Marcia, you'd be like, what is happening? To a certain degree, like, this sheer fury of Jan. And now I do get it, because you see this person succeeding in your face all the time. You've got all these raging teen hormones yourself. Mm-hmm. And as we'll come to find out, you've never experienced liking anything or having aptitude toward anything before.
This is also another 70s show where we spend untold amounts of minutes searching for something that was on the shelf but no longer is.
The Brady Bunch wastes more time than any show we've ever covered per its runtime.
Yes.
And it does so in ways like, let's have someone look for something and ask different people. Let's have dance routines.
That's the next several scenes that we're about to cover, is what you just described as finding out what happened to my awards.
And of course, like, watching this, you can't help but think, wow, nothing could matter less than this. And this is the whole show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are no stakes in the Brady Bunch at all, ever. Marcia does realize that something's amiss when she returns to the room and then goes through the house investigating in, I guess, true detective style. She starts with Carol, who has no idea, but suggests, maybe Alice moved him. She was dusting in there earlier.
She thinks, maybe I should go jab Alice in the back of the head and find out if she
knows.
knows.
Yeah, let's beat Alice while she's trying to clean our gigantic house that we force her to stay in and probably is locked from the inside.
Alice, who has her entire head shoved in the oven cleaning it.
Oh, yeah, the living room oven against the brick wall.
The 70s were weird.
It's disgusting.
Sometimes they even put toilets in closets.
It's so you can make duck confit while you watch the news.
Alice doesn't know anything about this either. She says, I don't know. They were there when I was in the room last. Marcia says, well, I mean, they're not there now. And then she goes full Shakespeare.
A whole lifetime of achievements were on that shelf. All my years of hard work. All my awards. Gone. Gone. Gone.
And you never got a dramatic award?
Alice, it isn't funny.
What a burn.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it's as funny as anything in this show gets, I'll tell you that.
I think they did. They tried to give those little cut down lines to Alice quite a bit because she's got that biting sense of humor that we talked about earlier.
Well, she does have Ann B. Davis. She has a natural way to reading her lines.
She's a comedic actor, for sure.
Well, she can actually act at all, too. Like, this show is one of the, I mean, we'll talk about this throughout. It's one of the weaker acted, well-known shows we've covered.
It's not good. Alice suggests maybe it was the boys. They could have been pulling a prank.
How is that not where she would go first?
That's the default.
I had to start with Carol. Carol, did you move my awards?
Woman who is a stay-at-home mom who does nothing?
And then Marcia has to then do her second thing before asking more people, basically be like, I can't believe my 4 years of hard work in my life have gone out the window. Because think about it, you're 15, you don't do anything, or however old she is. For the longest time, you're just shitting and trying to learn how to walk.
And then you turn 10.
Then you get
finally.
You're on the debate team, and you think apparently it's some achievement that has meant a lot. I'm imagining like Steven Spielberg coming home and being like, where are all my Academy Awards?
Jan ripped him up.
But he literally could be like, my life's work. And that's kind of how Marcia feels, I think, with her ribbon that says like best hog at the state fair.
So I'm wondering at this point if the episode version I watched on Pluto differs from the one you guys watched, because I didn't actually get a scene where Marcia then goes and talks to the boys about the prank.
You didn't miss anything, I can tell you that.
Did you guys have a scene like that?
Yeah, it's an amazing scene. That
really, that's what we're going to go with to describe it.
It's a sports scene.
Yeah,
I was
where three little white kids play basketball. That's what we all want to watch.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about the scene if you have any recollection.
I'd love to
describe
talk about
it to
this scene. Brady house exterior. The three Brady boys are playing basketball together. Peter attempts a layup from 1 foot away and whiffs it entirely. Greg makes fun of him and then throws a hook shot at the rim at 100 miles per hour, like you'd never want to do playing basketball. Then Bobby says, "You guys fucking suck," and makes a shot with no problem at all. So then, at this point, Marcia comes out and takes the ball, right? She says, "I hate you, all of you, and none of you are good at this. I would be better at basketball than you. And where are all of my awards? I'm powerful and special, and someone's trying to take that away from me." So Greg says, "Whoa, cool down, daddy-o," like he would probably say. I don't remember what he actually says.
No, I think that's verbatim.
Yeah, so right as this is happening, because this is a sitcom, Mike Brady comes home from work.
He drives up, and for a brief moment, I hoped he just plowed over the kids.
At least, like, take out Greg's knee or something like that. And then Mike says, "Whoa, everybody's fighting. We need to get to the truth."
That's something Mike says a lot.
That's like his whole role in the show is to have curly hair.
The calm mediator of the 6 children fighting or something stupid.
Probably learned this from his time on Father Knows Best. During this whole discussion of figuring out who could have reached up there to take Marcia's stuff down off the dresser drawers, throw it in the closet, Bobby very accurately says, "I'm too short to have done it." And then reiterates that a second time.
That's been Brian's excuse often.
That's true.
This was a really extensive scene that just got taken out of my Pluto version somehow.
Yeah.
Brian saying this, by the way, has taken 3.5 times as long as it actually takes because nothing occurs.
Yeah, it's like the best scene. But the other notable thing about this is Greg is wearing some sort of doublet from the Renaissance times where the front of his shirt is tied together and laced up. Right. And I've never seen anyone wear anything like that in the real world. Like,
was it groovy?
Far out, man. Righteous. But that's basically what happens.
Oh, and then the dad, was it Mike? Again,
Yeah.
I don't know their names.
Yeah.
Mike makes a shot.
Oh, yeah, he makes
that ends the scene.
Yeah, but he used to play for the Lakers.
And then he like fist pumps.
So Bobby got his basketball skills straight from Mike,
Straight
and the
from
others got it from Carol, is what we're getting here.
That's what I would assume.
Do we see Marcia shoots or doesn't?
We don't. No. And
if she did, she'd win an award for it.
I was hoping we'd get a scene where, like at the end, kind of like an outro where Alice goes outside, dribbles between her legs a little bit.
Like the Kevin scene at the end of The Office episode
like
where he
that.
shoots all those threes.
But yeah, with a windmill dunk.
And you hear someone behind go, "She's on fire!"
What I got was right after that, I assume. They all come in, and Cindy just has all the awards. She just has them in her arms, and she wanders around with them. I did notice
Look
that
at my Grammy.
Did you guys think it was weird she starts eating them one by one?
That would be if it was Kathy from Father Knows Best, that she'd be chomping those awards down.
I don't know where in my notes I put this. I'll just say it here. I said if Kathy and Cindy teamed up, Cindy's the brains, Kathy's the brawn. What a team.
That's true.
Cindy's one of the more likable characters.
I
me.
agree.
Right.
Did you happen to think that the awards seemed a little smaller when Cindy had them than they were, like, supposedly on the wall
she
at
nibbled,
first?
so they were smaller.
She's carrying all these awards that Jen had to, like, sweep off bit by bit and throw in there, and Cindy just got them all. Like, it's no big deal.
It's almost as if they probably didn't use the same stuff.
Because Cindy's not as big as Jan.
No, that's true. So,
now that you mention it. Huh. But also back then, resolution was so bad you couldn't tell.
No, bigness was kind of a vague thing.
The question of is it big or not was hard to answer.
When I said they were playing basketball, it could have been hockey.
It could have been a pool ball. Hockey. You picked the one sport that is so different.
They live in LA.
Yeah.
They're outside. Also, it does make sense that they live in LA because they are kind of like they're a traditional family, but I mean, I don't think a lot of Midwestern families dressed like this.
Surely not.
At the time with bell bottoms.
Even in the 70s, surely not.
Yeah, like my parents, I don't think did.
They're also...
Man, I wish.
maybe not all of them, but there are certain scenes that, especially the girls, just seem like way too tan to me. Like, it's not an appearance that anyone would have outside of California, and probably not even California, but it's TV. So anyway, they just also bronze. Especially the girls with their, you know how they have, what is it, hair of gold? Like whatever they say in the intro.
I think it says hair of Goldar.
Good. I always thought it was a strange combination when you've got the really deeply tan skin and just blindingly bright blonde hair.
It's kind of how we all have the opposite.
The paler skin you have, darker
and then really dark hair.
You mentioned it in the special intro thing, Spencer, but I had a note in here that the youngest one in Curls.
Oh, yeah.
She's not in Curls ever. So I guess she was like the first episode.
Well, they're just throwing words. I know how people write song lyrics. They're just putting words in there to make the meter work, and it's just, yeah.
Terry Pendleton and the Popcorn Crew, or whoever wrote that song.
I wish that's
I am
what it was.
interested in this.
The Peppermint Blasters.
1991 National League MVP Terry
And
Pendleton.
it's getting better, the Peppermint Blasters
He's
now.
Here's my Peppermint Blaster. Terry Pendleton is one of the few front men who plays the bass, actually. But the Peppermint Blasters, it's
the Peppermint.
It's other baseball players from 1991. Your Steve Saxes, your Don Mattingleys,
Ozzie Smith,
other people who played on the Yankees.
Let's take a quick break and we come back.
We became the Brady Bunch.
The gist of all of this, guys, what could have happened to these awards? The family must know.
And that is the whole thing with this episode, which is why you might find us talking about a lot of other things.
Yeah, we could have jumped to this point in about a minute if we wanted. 30 seconds, honestly. Jan was mad at Marcia, threw her trophies away. Marcia tried to find them. That's where we are.
Summed
That's
it up.
in the
We're at,
episode.
yeah. She's asked everybody.
In this scene here, we figure out where the trophies are.
Surely not this soon. Surely the person that did it might deny the crime.
We have Cindy with the evidence, but we do not know the perpetrator. Because, I mean, obviously it's not Cindy. Cindy's found them, and she wants them because she thinks, hey, Marcia, if you're done with these, because she found them in the closet and thinks, oh, Marcia must not want these anymore.
I love this logic, too, that if you are in possession of the physical representation of the award, you have won the award. Like, if you were to go get Rick Sutcliffe's Cy Young Award from the 80s,
you're the Cy Young
You
Award
have now
winner.
won the 1984 Cy Young Award.
This scene here is actually pretty great for Cindy. And I was reading a little independently written summary online, and this, I guess, big Brady Bunch fan described this as Cindy's first cute scene in forever. So I'm thinking Cindy must have just been awful and all the episodes leading up to this one, and this was one of her good moments.
Can you imagine watching this week to week and be like, fuck, Cindy wasn't
God, I'm
cute
sick
this
of
week again.
Cindy.
That's just it, though. You hit on it. It's not that she didn't have a scene to this point that worked. It's that every other scene to this point has been evil and malicious. This is the first cute one in a while.
Cindy's usually burning things and, like creating a chalk circle around herself and drawing pentagrams.
Well, she'd pulled out the lawnmower in this one episode and buried the dog, but left its head out. They caught it in time.
And thankfully, the directors knew not to include that in the actual episode.
What if one episode of the Brady Bunch, I don't want that because that's awful, but something horrible like that.
Maybe Cindy just goes off script and actually like punches Marcia. That'd be Jan that would do that.
Yeah, it would be.
Everyone is relieved that we've got the awards back, but we still don't have...
Me too. I felt, you're watching a show and you're just overtaken by its emotional waves.
Those high stakes, those Brady's high stakes we talked about. Well, the problem is we still don't know who did it. Mike and Carol say, well, we do know that everyone has denied it outside of one person. Let's cut to Marcia and Jan's room where the girls are discussing the situation. Marcia says, hey, did you put my awards in the closet? Jan says, yeah. I sure did. And Marcia's like, okay, do you want to tell me why? No.
Fucking power move here.
Yeah. I love this scene because it is not what I expected.
No.
I expected an obvious denial where Marcia knows Jan did it and has to coax it out of her. No. Jan says, I did it, I hate you, and I hope you
and
die.
I don't want to talk about this any further, and I won't.
And just leaves.
Yeah.
Storms out of the room, storms down the stairs. Carol stops her and says, what is going on? It sounds like you're fighting. This is where Jan gets into a denier state, where she says, no, everything's fine. We're not having any kind of nasty discussion.
I haven't done anything weird.
I didn't just stonewall your other daughter. Don't worry.
Carol isn't buying it. She says, this is the kind of fine that I think we need to talk about. So she brings Jan to the living room, I think. I'm not sure what any of these rooms are. There's a fireplace somewhere, and like you said, a stove and other places, and I can't figure out the layout very well.
Well, and all the rooms have wood paneling.
Yeah, they all look alike in a weird way, and the furniture is in strange places, but I think it's the living room, and it's time for a Mike and Carol pep talk, a tag team pep talk, where an emotional Jan kind of goes into the whole premise of the episode, delivers the line that we talked about, and it's just very emotional.
Oh, my bad.
Wow, that really did take me off guard. I did not...
I
knew
saved it for this one.
I knew it was coming.
All right, here's a real clip.
Well, all I hear all day long at school is how great Marcia is at this or how wonderful Marcia did that. Marcia, Marcia, Marcia.
Now, sweetheart.
All those awards staring me in the face was just too much. I'm tired of being in Marcia's shadow all the time.
Now,
Maybe instead of paying for a woman to do every job in this house, you buy a bigger house and we all have our own fucking rooms.
That might help. Yeah, maybe it's a little
that's not a bad
territory
idea.
issue.
I don't like the mom. I don't like that there's a full-time housekeeper and the mom doesn't have a job.
Well, she's
that makes
busy
me mad.
sculpting. She's got some
Oh.
sculpting to do and some freelance writing.
Let me get this out there. If you want to follow your passions and do your arts, great. Do it.
Don't hire a
Don't have
housekeeper.
6 fucking kids, not have a job, and then have a human in your house every moment that you pay to do everything.
Well, and this is costing Alice the ability to do a lot of the stuff she wants to do.
Which is
we'll
mostly
talk
Sam.
more about that next episode.
So Carol says, calm down, Jan. Marcia's 3 years older than you. She's had more time to accomplish things than you have in life.
Which struck me as kind of not
That's an
comforting.
odd way to go about it, for sure. I don't think that would work on any younger sibling. Well, of course they've done more. They're older. You haven't done shit yet because you're too young.
Well, okay, let's say it's 3 years difference, right?
Mhm.
So we'll say Marcia's 14. That makes Jan 11.
Sure.
3 years is 33% of a lifetime. So actually, numerically, it fits. Like, ooh, no, you've had
You should have
a third
had-
of a more lifetime. to
You
do
should have
this.
been giving this pep talk to Jan.
I should
You
have.
should have done it.
No, because the problem then would be like, I'll show you how you really get Marcia. Let's team up and we'll fuck this girl
We'll
up.
cut her brake lines.
Mike butts in at this point saying, you know what? It's not like Marcia just has good days anyway. It's like everyone has ups and downs, including Marcia. Marcia at this point bursts in excitedly to announce she just got named editor of the school paper.
What an honor.
It's an awkward moment because Mike and Carol are probably happy for her, but they can't really say anything because Jan's having her little freak out fest right now over this exact situation.
Yeah,
So
and
the-
Mike goes, that's fine,
That is
honey.
so good for you. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
he says that's fine. It's so funny. Because if you were Marcia, you should be upset by that reaction, probably.
And of course, she's Marcia, so she's not. She's just like,
Doesn't even
I
notice
just
it.
need to go tell my friend about it now. Doesn't give a
Yeah,
shit.
Jennifer's gonna fucking flip over this.
So Marcia leaves, excited to go tell everyone else about her new position in the school paper. And the parents wrap up the pep talk. They tell her Jan has her own talents. She just needs to make a point to figure out what they are.
I feel bad for Jan here more than before because she's
So the pep
however,
talk didn't work, in your opinion.
No, it's awful. But she also it now as the audience we're forced to realize Jan's not good at anything and doesn't like anything.
And that's okay, but the parents aren't saying that.
No.
The parents are saying, like, no, you'll figure out what you're good
yeah,
at.
and they repeat these little hokey, rinky-dink phrases they probably read on a wall hanging to her. I hate it.
Well, don't forget, she is 3 years younger than Marcia.
She's got time.
She'll blossom.
Yeah, find out what you do best and then do your best with it.
And she's gotta
we hear
do it-
that twice this episode.
She's got to do it within 3 years or she's clearly failing by their description.
The clock is ticking. Get to work, honey.
At the end of that 3 years, if you haven't accomplished anything, we'll turn Cindy loose on you.
Even if the clock is ticking on this, that wouldn't really matter because the very next day at school, the perfect opportunity presents itself to Jan, where she sees an advertisement of sorts in the school, tryouts for the pom-pom girls team. Marcia's never done that. Jan tells her friend Katie she's going to get started right away and how that'll really show her bitch of a sister, Marcia.
And that's how you know it's your true passion if it's to show someone.
Now, this scene was weird when she's talking to her friend, right? Didn't they pan back and forth and you never see both of them? It's one of those weird things.
So you don't know if they're in the same room together.
I felt like in my version of it, the audio was strange when her friend was talking.
No, it was. It was like one of them was extra echoey.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was one of those things that, a lot of times lines will be flubbed in this show.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned it on the Boob Tube Boys before, but back then, they were like, that's fine, that'll do. That would not happen.
They're just trying to get stuff done. Go
Even
as fast
in
as
the-
they can.
Even in the clip that we had of Jan reading her Marcia line, she missed like 4 parts of that.
Oh, yeah, she sounds drunk.
She's like, I'm tired of being in her shadow.
There's no shadow, Miss Lister Shadow.
Maybe she was drunk. Maybe it's driven her. This jealousy has driven her into alcoholism.
Oh, and by the way, on the corkboard where there's the pom-pom poster, there's another little thing that's supposed to be, like, keep reading, or those little motivational posters in schools. Prevent skin infections. Wash thoroughly.
Oh, that's a big 70s thing.
What? You didn't wash your hands, so you got a skin infection?
Before the 70s, people didn't know about washing.
I would imagine that, hand washing was very optional in the 70s. They probably didn't do that very much.
My favorite historical fact is that for a long time, until the guy who learned it or figured it out or whatever, doctors and surgeons wouldn't wash their hands. And they're like, why bother? That's stupid. And this went on for most of human history. It's absurd.
Which is why it's nuts when people believe they know things with certainty.
After a very short cut, Alice is cutting the hell out of some newspapers in the kitchen. I didn't really understand what was going on for several minutes in the scene, actually. This is so weird. Actually, I was not sure which of the two boys. This is Bobby and Greg, correct, that joined the scene?
Sure. I'm looking at Brian.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
Greg's definitely there because he is passionate about this.
It might have been Peter, but I think it's Bobby. Anyway,
I think it's Bobby too.
Yeah, I think it's.
It is definitely Bobby. I've looked further in my notes.
All right, so the oldest and the youngest boys in the kitchen come in there, join Alice, and grab some apples because everyone goes in the kitchen and just wolfs down apples.
Yeah, because they're wholesome.
They're growing boys. They need their apples. So they come in there, they're munching on some apples. They sit down at the table with Alice. They give her shit, like probably everyone does with everything Alice does. Although, to be fair, this is strange because we just cut straight into Alice doing this with the papers, and she's humming and being cheerful, and you don't really know what the fuck she's doing.
Probably not getting paid enough.
Oh, God, yes.
Certainly not for the fact that she's 24/7 on the clock.
It turns out Alice is making pom-poms out of strips of paper for Jan to practice.
They have this big house. They can afford a housekeeper. Go buy some pom-poms for your daughter. Don't have Alice make them out of newspapers, please.
But this is the 70s. Is there a pom-pom store? Where I don't know.
Where would you go to get a
now.
pom-pom? Yeah, any time.
Pom-pom Emporium.
Oh,
we have one here.
Oh, the one off 4th Street, of course.
Yeah, of course.
In the backyard, all the while, Jan's getting into some warm-up exercises that I guess are supposed to be for a pom-pom girl.
This is so awkward.
They look more like gymnast stuff,
She's not moving in rhythm or anything. She's just kind of jutting arms around and bending backwards. And
I bet it's because, of course, they didn't have the technology when filming the show. This is behind-the-scenes stuff. They couldn't play music. So she's probably just doing it to no sound.
She can't do a montage.
So they couldn't, cut in music. So she had no music to dance to.
You have her warming up here, right? They working, man.
Meanwhile, the oldest boy is sitting here with his pants on backwards. His pockets in the front look like back pockets.
And they're really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could put a lot of 70s stuff in there.
Well, everything was bigger back
then.
then.
Put a lava lamp in one pocket.
Pet rock in the other.
Yeah, get Nixon in there. I love these pants.
So Cindy asks Jan where her gear is. Jan explains that Alice is working on it. Alice and Carol show up just in time to fit this explanation perfectly in the parameters of the show. We get a little cheer scene. Marching band music plays, and Jan jumps around oddly, waving her disgusting pom-poms around.
Yeah, because the newspaper thing didn't work, they just used mops.
Mop heads.
Old, dirty mop heads.
Yep, that's disgusting. That's a gross pom-pom. Marcia and Mike watch from inside all the while, by the way, and you can guess what Marcia's saying at this time. Not, I can really tell she's trying to get at me and it makes me hate her. It's, man, I really hope she does well, and I hope that pom-pom tryouts work for her.
I did notice something about this, is no one outright says at this point, we think Jan's good at this. They all say oh, I really hope this works out.
Jan needs something is basically the concept. And okay, so Marcia did not succeed at pom-poms, right? Because
that's
Jan
what I thought.
Apparently not.
So why is Marcia then in this scene being like, maybe I should offer her some pointers to Mike?
Well, she does say, to play Marcia's advocate, she does say, maybe I should give her some pointers from my tryout. So maybe she's going to tell her what the format of the tryout is or something like that.
Something helpful.
Maybe that's a deleted scene in
also,
the extras.
A funny concept of what could be is I was bad at it, but I'm better than she is, so maybe I can give her tips.
Which almost assuredly is true.
Mike smartly shuts this idea down, recognizing that it's not something Jan would respond well to at this point, and Marcia agrees. I'm probably the last person she'd want to talk to about this, but I sure hope she does well. Later, when Jan's sitting cross-legged on her bed working on something, homework of some kind, couldn't really tell.
Probably her English article thing.
It could be.
So Jan's drawing here.
Is that what it is?
Oh, and the drawing looked pretty cool,
It looks
right?
pretty good, and the whole time I'm like, Jan,
make that your thing.
Draw.
Yeah.
You know, that's something Marcia probably can't even do because she's an outgoing, like, normo. Just learn to do an art thing.
It's at this time that Marcia decides to take up Mike's suggestion of, hey, why don't you tell her that you're rooting for her? That might be a good thing. Don't give her pointers, but tell her. Marcia comes in to Jan, who is drawing apparently. I couldn't tell. She was sitting cross-legged with something in her lap. And Marcia says, you know, Jan, I'm really rooting for you. And actually, I was expecting Jan to slap her or yell at her, but Jan's pretty appreciative of that at this moment. She's like, hey, you know what, Marcia, you're my sister. That means a lot. And that's it.
Sort of, because Marcia takes it too far, in my opinion.
Oh.
She goes beyond being supportive and says, I think you're doing great.
Oh, you'll be Miss Pom-Pom.
And you might even become Miss Pom-Pom, which is the leader of the Pom-Pom squad. I don't think anyone could have watched Jan practicing and thought that.
What do you think the perks are that comes with being Miss Pom-Pom?
Parking spot.
I think you would get real pom-poms. No
Stipend.
more mop head pom-poms.
Yeah, your own Alice that you can use for stuff.
The school's Alice.
Yeah, those are so disposable. They're just everywhere.
Oh, I bet you get like a gold tray for your cafeteria lunch.
There's a real quick cut after this scene, super awkward, because we're right back to marching band music and more backyard practice. This is a scene here where actually it's Peter and Bobby this time. They just kind of wander into the scene behind Jan while she's practicing to talk some more shit, because that's what the boys do. Alice runs them off by saying, hey, you know, you guys should help, and maybe you can become little sissy pom-pom girls while you're at it, because pom-poms are for girls, and Peter and Bobby are boys. And they're like, you know what? I'm getting out of here. I'm too manly for this shit.
I wish Alice would have just powerbombed one of them onto the concrete.
Somewhere Robert Reed takes another drink, like in the corner, like, wow, my life sucks. I hate the 70s.
He had to have many times in the course of making the show wondered what he was doing and how all went so wrong. Carol and Alice get up to dance with Jan in this whole process because Jan says, hey, I really do need some help. And it's a whole bunch of fun. Alice pulls a muscle and has to stop, and that's the end of that.
No, that's right. They form a little chorus line, the worst one ever.
It's delightful.
There's some singing, right? They move around a lot. It was what it was. So flash forward to tryouts. More marching band music. The judges look on approvingly as the girl before Jan jumps around excitedly.
You get a sense that that girl's definitely making the team.
Do you think she did that well? I couldn't really, I couldn't tell.
It is
I don't.
7 minutes of uninterrupted pom-pom dancing, and I don't know what that is. So I don't know if it's good.
This
I don't
show,
know if it's
if
bad.
you told me half the runtime of this episode was the pom-pom tryouts and practicing, and not even anyone talking, just the visuals of it, and people looking for those awards, I'd believe it.
So the judge thanks the girl before Jan, who is one of the four names that we're about to get into, I'm sure. Brian's certain she did well. I was not so sure. But she did something.
Just by the judge's reactions.
Sure.
Like they were like practically high-fiving.
She went before Jan too, so she's gonna look better by the time
True.
Jan's done. So Jan does her thing. They announce it's time for the last girl. I don't know. The show wanted to make sure you knew it was Jan wrapping up the show.
And just in general, I think they meant the last girl. Last place. Here she is for everything.
Jan has real pom-poms now, at least. It's one blue and one yellow. I took specific note of that.
Well, she knew that the way to win the pom-pom tryouts is to dress up like a minion.
Okay, I'm just now thinking about this, but it kind of drives me crazy, the lack of symmetry in those pom-poms. Really, you shouldn't have one of two different colors. I don't think.
I think that's what they do, though.
Is it?
I'm thinking
okay,
back to
now
like
you're
high
a
school.
pom-pom expert? Earlier, you had no idea.
I already said, no, I said that I like it.
No, I was talking to Van.
Oh, no, yeah, he's gone off the rails.
During the whole routine, as Jan kicks and flails and pom-poms or whatever, the women who are scoring this are like whispering to one another and writing things down. What could they possibly be writing down?
I think that Marcia was better. Yeah, I bet that's what they're saying.
It is Lena. I think Marcia was better.
So do you think...
I see why everybody likes Marcia.
Do you think they're like advanced pom-pom scouts, like they've been doing this their whole life?
No, that was the guy in the back with the radar gun.
Yeah, what are the qualifications of these people? I don't really know.
One of them went to pom-pom school for 10 years, Brian.
I bet you they were all in their time Miss Pom-Pom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they all got together afterwards because that's probably all you can do after being Miss Pom-Pom is to be a judge of Miss Pom-Poms.
Yeah, they formed the Pom-Pom Tribunal.
Ooh, this is a very depressing life we just created.
Do you think that's one of those things where every now and then they'll, get in the closet, dust off their own palms, and kind of work on their routine?
Probably.
And then say to themselves, you still got it.
Yeah, you still got it. Look at the old awards that you do have in your closet because you're an adult now. Your sister didn't put them there. You just know you shouldn't have them out. They're from 8th grade.
But then one day, it's a hard day at work. Start drinking as soon as you get home. Walking past your bedroom, you catch a glimpse of your pom-pom award, and you remember the life that you used to have and how much better it was. And in a fury, you throw the pom-pom award out the window, and then you regret it because now you no longer have your pom-pom award, and then you sob yourself to sleep in a drunken stupor.
And you kind of wake up knowing that you kind of need to change a few things. You're clearly not fulfilled. You're thinking back on your past accomplishments too much, and that means you need to make a change. One day long ago, pom-pomming gave you the fuel to get through the day. What's that going to be now?
Or you could just get back into pom-poms.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's maybe that's what leads you to judging these pom-pom competitions.
I could see if, there's like an independent league pom-pom team playing around here I can try out for.
The real shit. Not this mainstream pom-pom garbage, this glossy, high-res pom-pomming. I want the gritty stuff. The underground stuff. There's only 8 people
now
there,
it's starting
man.
to sound kind of dirty. Underground pom-pom.
Man, I saw them before they got big at pom-pomming.
You got to know the secret word to get into the arena.
So Jan's performance as pom-pom scouts, what do we think?
It's not good.
Does she have it? Does she have what it takes?
So I'm going to say 30 grade coordination.
It's bad. Do you think it was supposed to be bad?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think it was supposed to at least be kind of not that
Maybe they
great.
knew that the actress would not be good anyway, so they're just go nuts.
Because they're clearly not trying to say that this is a talent Jan has.
No.
They're trying to lead Jan to her eventual talent.
Well, and all the while this is happening when Jan's doing her pretty bad pom-pom attempt, Marcia is kind of in the doorway area, just smiling glowingly, approvingly, like, that's my sister.
Why is she there?
She sure is trying. She's got to support her.
She's scratching off, lottery tickets and winning money.
The judges smile politely at the end of Jan's performance and kind of whisper amongst each other. They don't really say much, but they don't look all that pleased.
One of them put an L onto her forehead with her hand.
So then they give the speech that all kids get at the end of a competition, which is, you guys were all so fucking good, but, we can't take most of you.
Only 4 are going to make the team.
Only 4.
Out of 6.
I wrote down the names because I want to talk about them and how they did in their pom-pom. We've got Gloria Harper. She was really good.
Ooh,
didn't, she was awesome. She went first and it was the best.
Do you think she's related to Valerie Harper, who plays Rhoda?
Almost certainly. And then we've got Katie Rand, a different Katie than Jan's friend, I'm assuming.
I was going to ask you if it was a different one or the same one, because she said she wanted to try out.
Okay, maybe it was
I bet it was her.
Good job,
that even
friend.
hurts worse.
So Jan's friend made it. Marcia would have made it if she tried again, but Jan couldn't make it.
Would Bobby make it?
Probably, if he wasn't a boy, And then we've got Judy Smith, the third one. She made it. She was just okay, I thought, but she was good enough.
Do you think she has potential, though?
Yeah,
to
she
add
could get
power?
better. She could, in time. And then lastly, Laura Vichmond, which I was certain was Richmond, but I pumped up that volume. And it's Vichmond. Laura Vichmond. Laura, I'm guessing, especially based on Brian's appraisal, was the girl we saw at the beginning of the scene.
Must have been.
And she
working it all out in my head now. Man, layers.
The logistics.
So Laura Vichmond won the 4th place, and you know what that means is that there's no spot in the team for Jan.
In fact, they say, per protocol, pom-pom protocol, we have to tell you, Jan, since you didn't make it, UGLY, you ain't got no alibi.
So yeah, 2/3 of the girls make the team. Jan does not.
This starts some sad music, and a mopey Jan just stays in her spot for a little bit before eventually kind of dejectedly grabbing her stuff and leaving. Back at the house, Marcia's telling Mike and Carol that she wanted to cheer Jan up after this debacle took place, but she didn't figure it would be a good idea. Mike says, once again, the voice of reason, that's probably for the best, Marcia. Let's see if that loser Jan wants to bring up the pom-pom thing on her own. And if she doesn't, let's just let it drop.
Who gives a shit?
Let's tiptoe around her and not take responsibility for our children.
You know what? I might design a building later.
Surprisingly, though, Jan enters the scene and it's with joy. She's full of joy because it turns out her Americanism essay won the contest and they're going to announce it to the whole goddamn school in an upcoming assembly.
I'll bet it was about just a scathing review of ultra-patriotism and uses industrial era Japan as an example. You know, the Meiji era.
Yeah.
That's what it goes
I
into.
bet there's a bunch of stuff in there, too, about the increasing power of the Christian right in conservative politics and how eventually that'll lead to kind of a more rabid nationalism.
Well, I got a 98.
That definitely is what I thought when I saw the title of What America Means to Me. All that would be in there.
My favorite part of the scene is Jan comes in and goes, guess what? And Carol, after Marcia just said, oh man, Jan didn't make the pom-pom team, Carol goes, you made the pom-pom team.
That was a little mean.
It was, yeah, I don't understand how they decided on that being what she said.
I think that Carol's thinking Jan's going to make this shit up and I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to be like, sure you did, honey. Good job being on a pom-pom team.
And then later, quietly to Mike, she'll be like, we need to get her to see someone.
Well, and don't they? Because we need to talk about what's going to happen here in a few scenes. Pretty in depth. But yeah, anyway, Marcia is really happy about this development and has a little fun. She's like, I'm going to write a story about you. Or I'll make sure that I can edit one since I'm the editor of the paper.
And already,
she's not the writer.
Already, by the way, I'm like, I don't think that's the best use of your editor's position.
She's kind of abusing her power.
Yeah.
She has a little fun here and pretends to be interviewing Jan for the school paper for this story.
Little fun.
Wait, I have it in my notes as not fun at all.
Well, it's a British accent. And for a little bit, actually, the whole family gets British here. We've got a little British bunch going on. Carol, too, by the way. They all do it. Mike doesn't. Mike's like, I'm not getting involved in this little British interview thing.
I hate this show.
He is quietly in the scene, though, which is perfect, while the three of them do their little thing.
He's standing there in the scene being 5'11" and like 130 pounds. Every single person in this show is too thin. Like they're all underfed.
You know, when they just eat apples, I think that's what they eat. That's
it.
all they eat. Like they're all very fit, but none of them have any muscle either.
Yeah.
Like they all just kind of are there.
I would imagine that was probably the prescribed diet by doctors in the
Apples.
70s. Yeah, for fitness.
They wouldn't be doctors because they go away if you've got an apple.
Oh, that's true. A day. You have to give them one every day.
Right.
The doctors were too busy not washing their hands at that time period.
Now, this is the body type you need to wear a shirt that laces up, though.
Probably a lot of 70s clothes. You needed to have that kind of weird body and not eat. So we've got a real doozy of a scene coming up here. I don't think I can do it justice, but it's time for Jan to lovingly go over her official grading for her essay, her award-winning essay, in her room privately.
Why?
Is this something...
She wants to revel in the details.
She adds it all up, which I guess
I've got it
for
written down.
things.
Yeah, here we go. She remarks aloud about how this is something Marcia has never done in her whole life. She got 15 points for spelling, 14 for grammar, 14 for neatness, 15 for originality, 15 for composition, 10 for presentation.
Ugly.
And 10 for literary style.
Looks like somebody hasn't read their classics.
That's a total of 98 points.
I don't think so.
Well, upon counting, Jan realizes this isn't 98 points at all. It's 93 points. You guys know what that means?
Yeah, she fucking lost to Nora
Coons. She didn't. Nora's 95 won this essay contest, and nobody knows it but Jan.
Okay, let's start here. This is a big deal. It's an essay that they get to read it in front, like at an assembly or whatever.
Yeah, she gets a big ceremony and a
Van is looking at me like I've said the dumbest thing ever because I have. It's the least big deal, but I guess to this middle school or whatever.
Yeah, it's an award from the Honor Society. Come on.
So did they not have two people add the numbers? Did they not use
that is my question?
Any technology? They had calculators.
These essay judges that are doing this very serious thing, and they're just like, I'm 98. I don't know, probably.
Yeah, close enough. You won.
Here's what it is. Okay, so you remember back to the pom-pom girls, the teachers. They were pom-pom girls when they were kids. They made their whole life about it. The thing is, the people who won the shithole essay contest or whatever it is 20 years ago realize that that is a scam and they've amounted to nothing, they don't care. They're just like, 14, 50, whatever, 98, it's fine.
I got another possible. These teachers who focused on palming over their education can't add 5 numbers together.
Can only do so many things well. So we know that Nora Coons is the actual winner of this essay contest, and no one else knows but Jan. Jan and the little voice in her head that we're about to meet.
The one that's in a tin can somewhere?
Echoey and a little demonic.
They're like, hey, Eve Plum or whatever your name is.
That's it.
Come read this line in a hallway and we'll put it in the show.
I personally would have preferred a little cartoon devil on her shoulder that was superimposed in, or a small Jan
of her. Yeah,
that
that's
they shrunk down onto her shoulder, like a good one and a bad one.
In a little devil outfit
and an
one with a
angel
halo.
outfit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no reason, says this little voice that we're talking about. There's no reason to let anyone else know this little secret that we've got.
I mean, it's right.
She should have won a spot on the pom-pom team too, honestly. She was the best one in the
That's
tryouts.
let's calm down.
So in the middle of this battle with her inner demon self, Alice runs in the room to tell her how fucking great it was she won this contest, and she's going to make her a big cake as a reward.
It's funny because in the next episode, we see how big Alice's cakes are, and they're fucking huge. Every skinny-ass Brady gets a plate of like a mound of cake.
And Jan gets this whole one to herself.
She unhinges her jaw, swallows it like a snake.
So this is, I guess, Jan's first reason. Well, I do want that cake, so maybe. And then the rest of the Brady family, or a bunch of the kids, run in the room and pick her up and
it's
tell
like
her.
A clown car emptying out into there.
They tell her how awesome she is. Like the whole family's like, Jan, oh my God, you did this thing. You wrote this Americanism essay, and we think you're so great. And then they leave. And Jan's conflicted. Everyone's so happy. She was so happy.
There's one thing in this scene I love, which is Greg's like, let me physically see the essay. I want to look at your fantastic score. And Jan says, oh, no.
I don't want you to smudge the ink.
Yeah. And it's like, no one, it's kind of like Jan looking over it in the first place. This doesn't happen.
No one's going to give it a second thought.
If Greg did, he's not going to be like, wait a second, that's not 98. He's not going to add the math up in his head like that.
Wouldn't you be asking about the content of it? Oh, what angle did you take?
I'm going to scrutinize the numbers.
Yeah.
Let me double check your count real fast here. With everyone out of the room, Jan's inner voice continues the manipulation, and she takes yet another look at all of Marcia's awards. The voice says, you'd be letting everyone down if you told the truth. And then, you deserve this anyway, whether the results are legitimate or not.
Kill the non-believers, Jan.
That's the next episode.
Okay, yeah.
At the assembly now, where it's time for Jan to make her big decision.
Where chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, is speaking.
A star is born.
I don't know how to. I just said the man in charge of announcements recites
I think
this
it maybe
list.
was the principal.
It
Could be.
I personally think I read a lot of depth into this man, and I think he should have been the main character of the Brady Bunch show.
Well, he did fulfill his duties, his lines, very accurately. I felt like I believed what he was there to do.
Yeah, he's kind of matter-of-factly just getting through the announcements. He looks kind of sweaty and tired.
He's droning on, actually. He doesn't really seem like he wants to be there, so I can buy that.
He got into education for the right reasons, to help kids, but then he realized the bureaucracy of the whole thing and the funding is low.
And it's only gotten better.
However, I will say I will say he did call attention to the fact that the PTA Bazaar was able to raise $87.
Pretty good back then.
$646.
You did it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really funny, too, because I'm taking notes of this as I watch, and I don't even remember that. Is how well he droned that thing. I just tuned him out.
Well, you want to know what I wrote down?
Okay.
I wrote down that he knows about the lab schedules for Science 9B. It's another thing he knows.
Between us, we came up with something.
It was a good announcement. I mean, I felt informed. I tuned it out, but I felt informed. He has to turn the microphone over to Mrs. Watson next, and she has a very important announcement to make regarding the Honor Society.
That she only wears yellow.
Mike and Carol are watching them with big smiles on their faces all the while, and just as Mrs. Watson begins the announcement, Jan makes her decision, rushes over, and we assume, because it's all in whispers, confesses the whole thing in those whispered tones that we can't hear, and then runs away crying. We get the idea of what she just told Mrs. Watson.
And this devastates Mrs. Watson.
Yeah.
She is so emotionally upset after this.
That just confirms that Jan shouldn't have bothered saying anything. She
Bingo.
should have kept it to herself. Mrs. Watson then updates the school. Hey, Turns out this whole assembly was pointless. There was an egregious error in the scoring. A terrible scoring mistake of 5 points took place. The winner is not Jan, but Nora. We'll just do this assembly again next week so Nora's parents can be here. End of assembly.
I really wanted, just like when they're like, well, the true winner is Nora Combs, and you hear from the crowd just a, fuck yeah!
Nora! Nora!
What's interesting is that nobody seems to be happy for Nora when they announce that. It's just kind of silence awkwardly.
Yeah, because it's a school assembly and the fucking kids don't give a shit.
You know what they do give a shit about?
I do.
Mrs. Watson about facing here and being like, but you know what? That assembly doesn't even fucking matter because the real winner is Jan for being a good sport and for admitting she didn't really win and for giving all the credit to Nora. I don't know much, but I think that's as good of an honor society mention as you can do, something like that.
Yeah, Mrs. Watson goes with, yes, Nora wrote the winning paper. She wrote the best paper. Jan, though, you're the best person that's ever lived.
You know what that means? It's time for the assembly people who did not give a shit about anything. Big rousing ovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we see Mike
and Carol
lean over and whisper to Carol and be like, Carol, I took off work for this.
Carol, I was supposed to build like this big auditorium.
Carol afterwards gets to tell a very sage line to Jan, who has come clean about the whole thing. And she's explained the situation. And Carol says, you know, Jan, sometimes when we lose, we win.
God.
And then there's some hugs.
You're the best around.
Wrapping up this episode here, we don't have much left, but we've got Jan and Marcia doing homework in the room. Marcia tells Jan she really created a sensation with all this shit.
The whole school is buzzing.
Words exactly. Her whole room is still buzzing about it, and that was yesterday.
Yo, did you hear about the girl that told the truth?
Shit, man, no way.
It's like the boy who lived in Harry Potter, except the girl who told the truth.
Once.
So Cindy comes in at this point, flops in the bed, complains she's got one of Jan's old teachers now, and all that teacher talks about is how good of a thing Jan did at the assembly. Jan. Marcia and Jan share a meaningful look, and they work together because they're going to team up to give that little pep talk that Mike and Carol gave earlier to Cindy now. They say, Cindy, you just need to find something you're good at and go with it. That's what life is all about. A little joke at the end of the episode that Cindy gets to deliver is, that's going to be hard to find what I'm best at. Pause for comedic effect. I'm just good at so many different things. End of episode. Sort of. There might have been a final scene after this.
Oh, yeah. There's a final scene. You want to do it, Brian?
Sure. We think we're going to credits, but we're not.
Yeah, I was annoyed that it juked us with this. I was like, oh, good, it's done.
No, we're not going to credits because we have to see Alice doing her indentured servitude. She's like humming, doing her cleaning. Oh, look, here's Greg. Alice says, Greg, you know what? Your help has actually cut my cleaning time in half because now I do my cheers while I dust the shelves. And then she says, rickety, rackety, rickety dust, and flings her rag around aimlessly, kind of hitting some of the shelves.
Oh, it didn't seem worth mentioning.
Did I do that right?
No, you nailed it. I think you actually used more effort, energy, and words to mention it than they did.
So it's like the basketball scene.
It really
earlier.
is.
I actually thought the episode was done, like everyone did at the end of that Cindy and Jan scene. And the credits played. They did the whole end music thing. And then we got that scene, and I still had my notes open. When I saw what that scene was, I just closed my notes, and I did not make any additional notes on that. But that part of my brain kicked in when I read end of show, and then I was like, wait, wasn't it not? And that's where you guys come in so handy.
Did you think for a moment that Samuel L. Jackson might walk out and ask them to join the Avengers?
I can't tell if that would be something I'm interested in seeing or not.
It couldn't be worse.
That's the thing. Plus, I like Samuel L. Jackson. That's a positive.
So what'd you guys think of the B plot in this episode?
What was the B plot?
Oh, there wasn't one.
Yeah.
It was just all, Jan hates Marcia. Jan tries to find something. Jan doesn't really find something.
No.
Episode ends. That's
Jan's thing in the end is just to tell the truth, which people should just be doing anyway. I mean, that we still don't know about Jan. And then Jan also has this haughty look on her face at the end, like, Cindy, you wouldn't know about succeeding like me and Marcia.
No, that's very true because in actuality, it never did come to fruition in this episode that Jan figures anything out. Later on, it's painting, I guess, like deeper into the show.
Which
so
again,
that is it.
Reiterates she should have
Okay.
been drawing
Yeah.
more.
I think it should have ended with everything is great, everyone's smiling.
Oh.
Jan lays down in bed. She pulls the covers up to her and lights are off. She's getting ready to go to sleep. And her smile slowly comes down and she says, "You win this round, Nora fucking Coombs."
Oh, she transfers it from Marcia to Nora.
Mhm.
I like that.
I do want more of Jan's inner voice demon battles. I want
Yeah.
to see what's going on there, and why is that being used in a comedic show that's this lighthearted? Because that really seems fucked up to me to be having such prolonged conversations with a different voice in your head.
That was a big, having watched a lot of Nick at Night, a big trope around that time, especially.
So people just were like, that's what happens.
I think it was lazy writing and that they didn't want to have to like show nuance of a character having an inner turmoil. So they were just like, let's literally say what they're thinking.
Let's speak it loudly. Yeah.
That bothered me. It made me think Jan really needed some help.
Well, and the show would have been more interesting if slowly Jan's mental health deteriorated.
She gets unhinged. I was going to say unhinges, but I don't know that is that
She
right?
unhinges.
She unhinges over the course of the
She
show.
probably has a lot of hinges.
Oh, well, yeah. It's the 70s. Hinges everywhere.
Hinges were huge in the 70s. Cabinets, people, everywhere.
I picked this episode because I thought it would be a good insight into, I think, what we talked about, the most memorable thing about the Brady Bunch to a lot of people, because I think a lot of the characters are kind of built around the dynamics between each other, and Jan and Marcia's was this, and it was pretty big. We ignored a lot of characters in this show, though, like in this specific episode of the show, I should say, and didn't really get a whole lot of insight into anyone else at all.
No.
I didn't pick anything up from the parents really, except I guess that's
You
probably
never
what they
will.
do. I was going to say that's just what they do in the show, I'm assuming.
No,
Or like the boys who were
Not a bit.
in this a bit, but I don't recall
They were there
anything.
only to be like a little bit of comedic relief,
They
it
were
seemed like, and
props.
that's
You get
it.
Bobby as comedic relief and Greg as kind of a wise, like, oh, come on, everybody, which are their roles. I do think this, while light on a few characters, it does pretty much tell you what everybody's about. Which they're all
because they're all one note.
Yeah, they're very thinly drawn.
True. It is considered, at least from what I could gather from some shallow internet research, one of the stronger episodes of the show.
Oh my God.
So that should tell you guys something.
No wonder the 70s hated this show.
So we'll get a chance to contrast it with I don't know, a different kind of episode next week. I don't know if it's going to give us any more answers to the questions that we're going to have about the characters, but we've started the process, and I guess we can take on the rest of it next week. You guys have any more thoughts about this episode?
I think I've said everything I could possibly say about it.
And then some, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like we over-explained quite a bit of a really shallow episode of TV.
Why don't you ask me again if I have any final thoughts?
Do you have any final thoughts, Fan?
Marcia, big fucking deal. I'll become this pom-pom and I hope it ruins your year. Hey, it's Greg, I'm feeling groovy and I want to interject for a second. Did anybody notice that my shirt's been tied together? We're all bad at basketball. We're all bad at basketball. Whatever's going on with Jan, I'll always be there for her. It's my duty as her sister to make her feel supported. I hate stupid Marcia. Why does she get everything? A year from now we'll make ghosts together and be better siblings.
The Boob Tube Boys is a Bootu Inc. production. If you like what you hear, we've got bonus content for you. Check it out at patreon.com/Bootu Inc. And while you're at it, check out Brian and Van's podcast miniseries, Podcasts, a Star Wars Story, available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Van for doing all our audio production work as always. This outro song I'm talking over is A Sister's Bond by our very own Brian Vaughn. The music used in the introduction section is courtesy of Toon Tank. Songs are Sneaking Out by Victor Cooper and Funny Detective by VIP Sound. Check out tootank.com if you too find yourself in need of royalty-free background music. Big shout out to Johnny Radical and Amanda Johnson for being super fans. any other budding superfans out there, hop on over to Apple Podcasts, show us your love with a 5-star review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And it goes without saying that even if you aren't a superfan and you don't want to leave us a review, we appreciate you anyway. Thanks for listening.